And one is by this completely independent scientist based in England who is now in his 90s, and his name is James Lovelock, who has written many books on Gaia. And he looks at the macroscopic aspects of Gaia, the cosmic, planetary aspect. So his claim is that Gaia is that the Earth, the biota, the sum of atmosphere and biosphere, is a superorganism. And he appoints himself, especially in the latest book, The Revenge of Gaia, as the doctor, the physician of this ailing patient. He calls Gaia a patient. Of course, his first claim was that our planet has a biography, and that we cannot take for granted that it will always be the way we know it, that it could very well become like one of its neighbors, Mars and Venus, who are both rocks. So that was the first alert, and actually came in the 80s. We have not listened very carefully. So, according to James Lovelock, now this patient is ailing, is very ill, and he appoints himself as his doctor. Then there is another take on the same concept, just as scientific, by Lynn Margulis, who looks at the microscopic aspects of this theory. So she looks at bacteria, for example, or molecules, or cells, little things like that, or even atoms. So her claim is that the biota is a web of interconnected ecosystems, and that this biota and all its population, including us, has evolved by symbiosis. I think this is a very important concept. We often think of evolution in Darwinian terms as the survival of the fittest, as competition. If I fit the system better, I will survive and you will perish. Competition. Margulis claims that no, that evolution has happened by symbiosis, which is another word for cooperation. And symbiosis often happens between a host and a guest. For example, in human life, when the mother is pregnant with the fetus, there is a symbiosis, and there is a host and a guest. So one metaphor for Gaia is also hostess. We are being, we are under the gracious auspices of a hostess here, and we will not always be welcome, or cannot take for granted that we will always be welcome. And then the other claim that she makes is that our ancestors are bacteria. Bacteria is the first, the first really step of evolution. Bacteria are 4 billion years old. She claims, Margulis claims, that sex begins with bacteria. And that really the first form of symbiosis is when a cell enters another cell and then becomes the nucleus of that other cell. And that is a major leap in evolution that is as big as any other leaps that happened subsequently. So that's when sex begins. And in fact, she also claims that bacteria have sex all the time with their neighbors, and they just have it, whoever their neighbors might be, they're not very picky. And that they have sex not to reproduce, and not based on gender. They don't discriminate based on gender, but just to revitalize themselves. They exchange genes to revitalize themselves. And so, one of the recommendations I hear from Margulis is, okay, well, if these organisms have been welcomed for 4 billion years on this planet, and if we are the new kids on the block who could be kicked out at any time because we are messing up with this hostess, then maybe we should learn something from these bacteria. How can they achieve this complete selflessness, this being completely out of the ego, that they can actually have such rejuvenating lives, or orgiastic sexual lives, she calls them. Okay, one thing that both Lovelock and Margulis agree on is that Gaia is not really a very nice mother, or at least we shouldn't take for granted that she is, forever patient. As I said, Lovelock calls her a patient, but sometimes she can become impatient, like all patients who wait too long. And actually, Margulis calls her at one point a tough bitch. And so, you know, a tough bitch who can be fed up with us. Because we as a species have abused her quite a bit, and we may have overstayed our welcome. And we started as a symbiotic partner, one of the many species that evolved symbiotically with other species, more complex. We are inhabited by many bacteria, and in fact, if we lose these friendly bacteria, we may get very sick. But then, from being a symbiotic partner in the web of life, we actually have become a bit of a parasitic occupier. Some species that can really threaten the homeostasis or the balance of life on this planet. So, so this is a warning for us. This Gaia theory is really a warning for us that we are not doing very well.